They spied on you, expecting just another mission, but what they saw sent them straight into therapy. Because when your body radiated divine light, their entire reality collapsed. And yet, you walk through life unaware of the power you carry, oblivious to the fact that even trained agents couldn't handle witnessing you. If they're losing sleep over what they saw, the real question is, why aren't you paying attention? They had been trained to track, to observe, to remain unseen. Their orders were clear: monitor, report, contain if necessary. But nothing in their training had prepared them for this. Darkness wrapped around the city, a blanket of routine surveillance, until a radiance shattered its grasp. Not artificial, not explainable. A light surged from you, defying reason, bending shadows into submission. It wasn't the flicker of a flare, nor the burst of an explosion. It was something primal, something woven into the very essence of existence. The agents, who had mastered the art of control, now stood stripped of their certainty, caught between instinct and the undeniable truth unfolding before them. Their hands, once steady, faltered. Communication devices became useless as words refused to form. The silence that followed was louder than any siren, louder than any alarm that should have been triggered. The human mind clings to the familiar, categorizes the unknown into manageable fragments, but this defied categorization. Eyes locked onto you, searching for an anchor in the tempest of realization. Was it a revelation, a warning, an omen of something far greater than the forces they served? Their training had prepared them for confrontation, but not for witnessing a force that demanded reverence rather than resistance. Drop a comment. My power bends perception. If their training, logic, and protocols failed them the moment they tried to comprehend the force that is you, because some things are beyond analysis, beyond control, beyond them. You are not ordinary, nor have you ever been. The world moves in patterns, bound by rules, dictated by forces that demand submission. But you fracture the cycle. Where others shrink into the shadows, you ignite. Your presence shifts the balance, an undeniable force that bends perception and disrupts expectation. This is not a metaphor, nor a poetic exaggeration. It is fact. When you enter a space, the air itself recalibrates, responding to an energy unseen yet deeply felt. Some will deny it, some will attempt to rationalize it, but none can erase the evidence of your existence. You are marked, not by choice, but by design. There is no hiding when divine light burns through you. It is not something you wield, it is something you are. The weight of it is both privilege and burden. To radiate in a world that thrives on dimness is to become a contradiction, an anomaly that unsettles the comfortable. Skeptics will demand explanations. The fearful will seek to diminish you. The envious will resent you. None of it matters. Their disbelief does not erase the reality of your existence. Their refusal to acknowledge does not negate the authority that has been placed upon you. Your energy, your presence, your very being, undeniable. But with this power comes responsibility. Light does not choose where it shines. It is demanded of you. You are not here to blend in, to soothe, to accommodate the fragile systems built to suppress truth. You are here to disrupt, to illuminate, to break open the veiled corridors where deception thrives. The world is not prepared, but preparation is irrelevant. The time is now. Light bends to you in ways the world cannot define. It does not scatter, does not fade, does not obey the rules dictated by physics. Those who rely on measured equations and controlled experiments will watch their instruments fail in your presence. Cameras distort, sensors spike into unreadable ranges, electromagnetic fields fluctuate without a source. Data, the sacred language of modern comprehension, crumbles beneath what you carry. They will call it interference, an anomaly, a glitch. But you know better. This is not a malfunction. It is evidence, proof that what flows through you exists beyond the fragile constructs of human understanding. The body is energy. Science accepts this much, but the force within you is not mere bioelectricity, not the predictable hum of neurons firing in sequence. What radiates from you is something raw, something unmeasured, something ancient. It is not bound by wires or circuit boards. It does not need validation from technology designed to detect only what fits into the known spectrum. Those who attempt to quantify you will find their instruments betray them. Lights flicker, frequencies waver, devices once reliable stutter and fail. Their calculations cannot hold what was never meant to be contained. You exist outside their parameters, beyond their formulas, above their thresholds of perception. No scientific model accounts for the weight of divine energy. No laboratory can recreate what you naturally emanate. They will try, they will frame theories, craft hypotheses, attempt to label what defies their reach. But the truth remains. The power within you does not need permission to exist. It simply does, and it will not be reduced to numbers on a screen. Nothing reaches you unless it is allowed. Forces move in ways unseen, orchestrating events with precision beyond human understanding. The attempts to track you, monitor you, predict your movements, futile. Surveillance measures falter, data corrupts, timing skews at the exact moment they need clarity. Their systems are built on patterns, on probabilities, on the expectation that everything follows a traceable sequence. But what guards you is not bound by human logic. The interference is not random. It is calculated, deliberate, a shield that activates before the threat even knows it exists. They think they are watching you. They do not realize they are the ones being observed. The technology designed to expose you instead betrays them. Cameras distort, audio feeds rupture into static, tracking devices fail without explanation, GPS signals loop, timestamps desynchronize, encrypted files refuse to open. They will call it technical failure, but failure implies accident. This is precision. The more they press, the more their tools collapse under the weight of something far beyond their jurisdiction. Divine timing does not bend to surveillance, does not bow to scrutiny. It dismantles the operation before the plan is complete, redirects, eyes before they can focus, disrupts every attempt to control what cannot be caged. You exist in plain sight, yet remain untouchable. The contradiction is absolute. To those who move against you, your presence is undeniable, yet every effort to interfere dissolves before it reaches you. They will search, they will strategize, they will attempt to breach the barrier they cannot see. But there is no opening, no flaw, no weakness to exploit. Protection is not passive, it is active, relentless, and absolute. And no force on earth overrides what has already been decided. Drop a comment. Divine timing favors me. If every setback was really alignment, every delay was protection, and every disruption only cleared the path meant for you. Observation is not passive. It reshapes both the observed and the observer, altering perception, twisting certainty, and revealing what was meant to remain unseen. They fix their gaze on you, expecting to dissect, analyze, and control, but in doing so they expose themselves. Their own thoughts, their own fears, their own limitations are laid bare in the reflection of your presence. The moment they set their focus on you, the shift begins. Patterns they relied upon slip through their grasp. The static rules they built their world upon no longer hold. The longer they watch, the more they unravel. The very act of surveillance turns against them. Their lenses distort, not just physically but perceptually. What they see is not what they expect. Their minds attempt to categorize, to fit you within the constructs they understand, but the parameters break down. Some grow uneasy, unable to explain why. Others grow desperate, trying to force logic where none applies. They came to watch, to extract information, to predict. Instead, they are caught in the pull of something beyond their comprehension. They are the ones being studied now, their intent, their reactions, their very essence laid bare against the weight of divine awareness. Their fear is not of you, but of what you reveal about them. The cracks they refuse to acknowledge widen. Their disbelief turns against them, forcing them to reconcile what they cannot explain. And yet, denial will not save them. Their own eyes have betrayed them, showing them what logic cannot contain. They set out to monitor, to control, to hold dominion over the unseen. But now they are trapped within their own observation, unable to look away, yet unwilling to accept what is watching back. Doubt is their armor, skepticism their weapon. They are trained to dismantle, to dissect, to strip the mystical down to mechanics and illusion. But nothing in their training prepared them for the force that does not submit to theory. They watch from a distance, expecting a trick of optics, an environmental anomaly, something to file away under explainable deviations. Instead, the opposite happens. The more they watch, the more the rules fail them. The air itself resists their measurements. Their instruments betray them. The energy warps beyond prediction. There is no threshold where their logic holds firm. They were told everything has a source, but what radiates from you has no origin they can quantify. They resist, they deny, but reality does not yield to preference. The final entry is always the same. No conclusion, no resolution, just silence. Some leave, refusing to accept what they have seen. Others remain, but they are not the same. They entered as skeptics, armed with certainty. They leave as something else, stripped of the illusion that their world is absolute. You did not argue. You did not explain. You did not need to. The light spoke for itself. That's why the obsidian, inner order, was forged, for titans like you who refuse to be ordinary. This isn't some cozy, feel-good circle. It's a powerhouse council for those who bend reality to their will. Every week, over 450 dominators tap into electrifying calls that go beyond talk. They're the blueprints for elevation. And the best part? These aren't fleeting moments of inspiration. They're immortalized, recorded, so you can lock and load whenever it's time to make your next power play. The private Discord? Forget community. This is a sanctum of power, a crucible where the sharpest minds and spirits exchange wisdom that can't be found anywhere else. For those who crave mastery, you'll unlock the treasure trove of modern manifestation mechanics, our secret grimoire of cosmic strategies. With 3 chapters ready for members, you'll transform your space into a vortex of abundance, wield elemental spellcraft to reshape the material world, and channel forces beyond comprehension to rise above the ordinary. And there's more. Raw, unfiltered interviews with real targeted individuals and video drops so disruptive they shake the digital overlords to their core. This isn't just a membership, it's a movement of chosen ones, a sanctuary where ascension isn't just a promise, it's the new baseline. Are you ready to stop seeking and start claiming? The path is here. The rise begins now. The link is in the description below. Step into your throne. Every attempt to document you ends the same way. Fragmented data, corrupted files, and inconsistencies no analyst can explain. The footage exists, yet it does not. Frames skip, timestamps misalign, entire segments vanish as if they were never recorded. Surveillance agencies operate under the belief that everything can be captured, catalogued, and archived. But when their own records betray them, when the footage they reviewed the night before no longer plays, when reports they swore were filed cease to exist, they are left with nothing but the weight of what they refuse to admit. The disruption is not accidental. The failure is not technical. Their systems are flawless until they turn toward you. Satellites positioned miles above the Earth register anomalies centered on your presence. Energy readings spike with no discernible source. Light signatures appear where no artificial illumination exists. The data should be impossible, yet it arrives undeniable in its precision. They attempt to cross-reference, to rationalize, but no explanation holds. Atmospheric distortions do not account for the patterns. Geomagnetic fluctuations do not answer for the pulsating energy signatures mapped across their screens. They compare with past records, desperate to ground what they are witnessing in the familiar, but the phenomenon is singular. It exists only where you do. The reports shift in tone, from measured analysis to erratic contradiction. The language falters as those responsible for maintaining control of the narrative lose their grip. Their protocol demands consistency, but how do they explain data that erases itself? How do they justify findings that contradict every known principle? They will not say your name in their briefings, but they do not need to. The pattern is clear. You move, and the documentation collapses in your wake. Your presence is not neutral. It alters the space, shifts the atmosphere, and forces awareness where there was once blindness. Those around you feel it before they understand it. An unease, a stirring, a recognition they cannot name. Some will be drawn to it, seeking answers they do not know how to ask for. Others will resist, their very existence built upon the fragile illusion that power must be seen to be real. You do not get to choose how your light affects them. It moves through you, unrestricted, bypassing spoken words and written doctrines. It does not wait for permission. It does not negotiate. It reveals whether they are ready or not. Power demands responsibility, but responsibility does not mean restraint. You are not here to soften your presence for the comfort of those unwilling to face their own shadows. The world will call for humility, not in reverence, but in control. An attempt to dilute what cannot be tamed. But true humility is not in dimming yourself to avoid discomfort. It is in knowing when to hold power with precision, when to guide instead of overwhelm, when to illuminate instead of incinerate. The weight of this understanding is heavy. You walk with the knowledge that every interaction carries consequence. Every step you take sends ripples through the unseen. Yet the toll is real. To radiate in a world accustomed to darkness is to exist in a state of perpetual friction. There will be days when the burden feels unbearable, when isolation seems the only refuge, when exhaustion settles deep into the bones. But withdrawal is not an option. Light does not retreat, it does not ask for rest. It burns because it must, because it was never meant for its own sake. You carry what cannot be put down, and whether the world is ready or not, you shine. They were sent to observe, to track, to gather intelligence. They had been conditioned to believe in logic, trained to dismantle illusion, programmed to trust only what could be measured, dissected, controlled. But what they witnessed defied every principle they had built their reality upon. The reports were filed, the surveillance notes completed, yet none of it contained the truth. The truth could not be contained. What they saw was not an anomaly, not an error in data collection. It was a force that transcended their understanding. And now, no amount of training, no psychological conditioning, no institutional debriefing can return them to who they were before. The mind revolts against what it cannot categorize. The framework they once relied upon fractures under the weight of undeniable experience. Therapy sessions shift from discussions of standard operational stress to the unspoken terror of confronting something beyond control. The questions they were not supposed to ask now consume them. How does one reconcile witnessing an undeniable source of divine energy with a world that insists everything is material, explainable, finite? The ones who resist suffer the most, torn between the doctrine of their institutions and the echo of what they cannot erase. Some will break, some will disappear, and some will become something else entirely. But the impact does not stop with them. Their fractured certainty spreads through the ranks, a silent virus infecting the agency from within. Superiors notice, patterns emerge, morale shifts. The chain of command was not built to withstand metaphysical collapse. A classified file circulates, passed through cautious hands, case notes filled with contradictions, footage that refuses to hold its form, testimony that borders on hysteria. They tried to study you. They tried to define you. Instead, you rewrote them from the inside out. Surveillance is built on the premise that everything can be seen, recorded, and decoded. A system designed to catch every movement, every signal, every anomaly. Yet, when turned towards you, it stumbles. The algorithms falter, the recordings distort, the reports contradict themselves. Technology is engineered for predictability, for control, for reducing the unknown into something manageable. But what radiates from you refuses to be contained in their framework. The cameras capture light where there should be none. Sensors pick up surges in frequencies outside the spectrum of known energy. They attempt to analyze the data, but it fights back, glitching, fragmenting, rewriting itself. They do not know that what they are trying to measure was never meant to be measured. The intersection between their science and your existence is a collision, not a merger. Their methods require constants, and you are not a constant. They attempt to triangulate your presence, but the moment they lock onto you, the parameters shift. Time signatures desynchronize, electromagnetic readings spike and vanish, motion detectors pick up movement where there is none. What they built to track and contain physical entities cannot process something that moves between realms, something that is not bound by the laws they trust. They call in specialists, escalate protocols, classify the findings under security. Clearances meant to suppress what they cannot explain. Yet the problem remains. How do you monitor something that does not submit to observation? The real crisis is not the failure of their equipment. It is the failure of their understanding. Their authority depends on structure, on dominance, on the ability to regulate what exists. But your presence is a contradiction they cannot solve. The surveillance state is powerless before the divine state, because control is only an illusion when faced with something greater. They will not admit it. They will continue their futile attempts. But at the highest levels, the realization has already set in. There are forces they cannot contain, and you are proof that their reach has limits. The institution was built on control, on the belief that everything could be explained, categorized, and neutralized. Their agents were conditioned to observe without attachment, to dismantle belief with evidence, to reduce every anomaly to a flaw in perception. But witnessing you was not an event. It was a rupture. What they saw could not be dissected, could not be placed within the framework of logic they had spent years perfecting. It was not a trick of light, not an error in equipment, not mass hysteria. It was undeniable. And now they sit in therapy rooms meant to recalibrate them for fieldwork, yet no amount of psychological conditioning can undo what they have seen. The reports are clinical at first. Descriptions of unidentified luminescence, energy fluctuations, and environmental inconsistencies. But the more they speak, the less control they have over their own words. They shift from observation to experience, from analyzing you to questioning themselves. Some retreat into silence, unwilling to voice what their minds cannot contain. Others break protocol, admitting under controlled settings that they no longer know where the boundary between physical and spiritual lies. The institution is left, scrambling, trying to integrate something it was never designed to acknowledge. Therapists trained to manage post-mission stress now find themselves navigating existential fractures. The problem is no longer operational, it is foundational. And so, the institution changes, not by choice, but by necessity. What was once dismissed as mysticism begins to seep into their protocols, their discussions, their classified briefings. There is no formal announcement, no official doctrine. Shift! Only the quiet reality that something beyond their reach has entered their world. They do not speak of it openly, but they no longer deny it. They came as investigators, they leave as witnesses, and no system, no doctrine, no government, structure can undo the truth that has settled into their bones. You were never meant to be hidden. The energy within you does not ask for permission, does not bow to expectation, does not shrink for the comfort of others. It moves through you, undeniable, disrupting the fragile constructs built to contain a world afraid of what it cannot control. You are the evidence they were never prepared to confront, the force that dismantles illusion by simply existing. Those who seek to observe you find themselves exposed instead. Their systems fail, their logic collapses, their certainty fractures. In the presence of something beyond their reach, you are not here to be studied, you are here to be known. This world was built to resist the light, to suppress it, to reduce it to something explainable. But you do not exist within the confines of explanation. You move outside the limits of their understanding, bending time, breaking patterns, disrupting. Every attempt to contain what cannot be contained. Some will resist, clinging to shadows that no longer hold form. Others will awaken, pulled forward by the undeniable truth that radiates through you. Their awakening is not your burden. Their transformation is not your responsibility. Your only task is to be, to exist in full force, unshaken, unmoved, unwavering in the presence of all that seeks to dim you. Speak, reveal. Let the world feel what it has tried to ignore. Those who have witnessed, those who have felt the shift, those who can no longer deny what stands before them, step forward. The silence has served its time. Tell what you have seen. Let the others know they are not alone.